Welcome back. More now on the situation in the Middle East, where 4 people have been wounded after a shell exploded near a UN patrol in southern Lebanon. Israel has denied reports it was behind the strike. Well, I'm joined now by former senior policy advisor to the US State Department's Israel-Palestinian negotiating team, Laura Blumenfeld. Good to have you with us. Let's talk about that strike first. Of course, there have been tensions between Hezbollah and Israel along that crucial blue line, as it's known. And this only serves to raise concerns about what's going on alongside that border, surely.
Absolutely, raise concerns and just remind us that for Israel, while they're fighting in Gaza, they really have their eyes on the north. The generals, Israeli military planners, for years, the thing that gave them night sweats at night was not Gaza to the south, but in fact, the precision-guided missiles that are located on their northern border aimed at their population centers.
Right. And so obviously no one wants this to escalate. At the moment, it seems that Israel and Hezbollah have been exchanging fire within a kind of almost acknowledged limitation. But these are UN staff that were involved, and we have heard of a number of strikes. Israel, crucially, has said they didn't strike a car. We have now gone back to them to say this was a foot patrol. Do you know if there were any strikes carried out in that area? But there have been a number of allegations, haven't there, of strikes on hospitals, on other kind of staff, journalists as well.
Right. The allegations are flying. And at a moment like this, it's very, very dangerous that there be some kind of miscalculation. As you said, the Israelis are denying it, but this very easily could escalate. And I think one of the reasons why the Israelis are going a little harder, they're lighting up the Bekaa Valley with strikes in Lebanon, is because if there is a ceasefire, I think there's a sense that this deal, the hostage deal, if it comes through, might be the final deal. So this might be their last opportunity or waning opportunity to get their strikes in the north while there's sort of a worldwide acknowledgement that the battle is on.
Right, that's interesting to hear. And of course, in my introduction to you, it said that you have been part of the Israel-Palestinian negotiating team. From what you can gauge and what you're hearing, how close are we to a potential ceasefire?
Well, unfortunately, we're not. I wouldn't say we're super close. Part of the reason is because both sides do feel like it's a fight to the finish, and both sides feel like time is on their side. For Hamas, they're getting great PR value out of this, and the world is, increasingly pulling back from its support toward Israel. And then for Israel, they won't be fooled again. Their commitment is total victory, absolute victory. So they feel like they want to keep fighting. And then the third reason is really regional support. The Arab states are focusing on ceasefire now and a two-state solution, and the Israelis just simply aren't there psychologically. While they're holding hostages down in those Hamas tunnels, there's no way that they can even think about crossing a two-state bridge.
Right. And tonight we are actually at a protest in Tel Aviv where people are calling for more to be done for that hostage release. Clearly, a lot of frustration with the Netanyahu government. And there were protests, of course, before against Prime Minister Netanyahu, because of his plans to curb the Supreme Court's powers. So is this having any effect at all, do you think, on the administration and the Knesset?
Well, for Netanyahu, look, there's one magic word in Israel: security. And Netanyahu branded himself as Mr. Security. He campaigned, with the slogan, peace through strength, and he delivered to the Israelis war through weakness. The soldiers being held hostages really are a sensitive point for Israeli society because it's a country of citizen soldiers. Everybody knows, everybody's child actually goes to the IDF. And the one thing they could feel was guaranteed was that no soldier would be left behind. And that feeling of abandonment goes right to the heart of the Israeli psyche. So this actually could be a turning point.
Right. And what is interesting, though, is that the protests in Israel are for the hostages to come home and seemingly growing frustration with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but they're not necessarily for a ceasefire. How much should we read into that?
Well, so the hostages do include the soldiers. That's who's out there now, and those are kind of like the golden boys of the society. It's true that most Israelis aren't pushing for a ceasefire now, but I think once you take the hostages out of the equation, it takes the heat out of the battle. There's no longer a kind of justification, maybe, for some of the things that Israel is doing in Gaza. I think that's why the United States is pushing so hard, the U.S. administration, to get a deal, because once you take them out, then everything is open, to calm the situation down. One of the negotiators described the situation to me in a word as combustible. As long as there's no ceasefire, the wildfire of battle could spread across the Middle East.
Interesting. And seeing, as you mentioned, the pressure the United States is putting on Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government, there does seem to be a contradiction of we are seeing increasing public frustration aired by Secretary Blinken or President Biden, yet we are also seeing arms continue to be sent to Israel.
Yeah, it's all about balance for this administration. I mean, Biden is on a tightrope with no net. From the left, the political winds are blowing on him very much to start conditioning aid and slowing down delivery of arms to Israel. And then from the right, look, he's running against Donald Trump, who's very pro-Israel. Trump will unleash the Republicans in Congress and sort of blast Biden for appeasing Hamas. Hamas, again, you have to remember, is considered a terrorist group in the United States.
Right. But at the same time, there is a lot of internal pressure in the United States, is there not? As there is in a lot of countries calling for ceasefire. There's a lot of awareness now about what's happening in between Israel and the Palestinian territories. How does President Biden balance that? Because there are also calls for progression towards a ceasefire or a two-state solution, as far down the road as that may be.
Well, I love the way he put it. Look, for him, the human toll is intolerable, and that's real. The suffering is really affecting him personally. The way he put it recently was, he said, we need at least to get on a train to the two-state solution. He's Amtrak Joe. He rides the train actually from Washington to his hometown for all of these years. He sees it as a destination. Put that mark on the horizon. Let's get to a ceasefire, and then we can do what we were always trying to do in the Middle East, which is to integrate it, to create a new regional alliance between Israel and Saudi Arabia. There's the carrot rather than the stick, and to create sort of an alliance for positive change rather than the alliance of destruction, which he sees as being run by Iran.
I'm interested to know, Laura, do you think that if there is a ceasefire that's achieved, that then the Biden administration will then quickly pivot to discussions of a two-state solution? Or do you think it will take much longer than that?
I think they're talking about it now. I think they're talking about it, though, with some diplomatic finesse and also emotional intelligence. Both populations, Israelis and Palestinians, are deeply traumatized. Nobody expects them to sort of jump up and be happy to be, jolly neighbors. I think that it's going to be a sort of a destination rather than an immediate, miracle from the heavens of a two-state solution tomorrow. But everybody is committed to getting there.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Laura Blumenfeld, really good to have your insight with us here on NewsHour tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.